Good day, everyone! Welcome to our very first ever video! So, are you ready to learn something today? Are you?
Japanese literature has been influenced heavily by the Chinese literature from the ancient period all the way to the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, which corresponds to the early modern Japanese literature. Japanese literary works also reveal elements of Indian and later of Western elements, but above all, they reveal a distinct style which has also greatly influenced both Eastern and Western literatures. Japanese literature can be divided into four periods: the ancient, classical, medieval, and modern.
Ancient literature in Japan deals primarily with myths and legends, tells like the creation of Japan, wherein the islands came from the gemstones imbued in the swords of God are very prominent during this period. The celebrated writers during this period are Ono Yasamaru, Nihon Shuki, and Man Yu Shu, who wrote based on real events in the country. The classical literature in Japan occurred during the Golden Age, the Heian period. During this period, Murasaki Shikibu, one of the greatest Japanese writers, wrote the seminal text, Tale of Genji. Tale of Genji, considered the world's first novel, is a very charming and accurate depiction of the Japanese court during the Heian period, under the reign of Empress Akiko.
History and literature were intertwined during the medieval period due to the influence of the civil wars and the emergence of the warrior class. Thus, war tales are very prominent during this period. Beside war stories and tales, the popular form of Japanese poetry, the Renga, saw its rise. During the medieval period in Japan, history and literature were closely connected because the event of the time, like civil wars and the rise of the warrior class, samurai, had a big influence of the kinds of stories people told. This is why many writers focus on battles, bravery, and war heroes. At the same time, it was not only war tales that became popular. Poetry also grew. One of the most important forms of poetry during this time was renga, a type of linked verse poem where poets would turn writing lines to create a longer poem together. In short, war shaped the story, while renga showed the artistic and cultural side of the medieval period in Japan.
Now let us talk about modern literature itself. Modern literature can be divided into two: early, modern, and modern. In the early modern period, which happened during the Edo era, new forms of arts and writing appeared. For example, there was kabuki drama, which is traditional Japanese theater. There was also the haiku, a very short form of poetry that is admired for its simplicity and depth. Another example is the Yumihon, type of Japanese book that focus more on text and less on illustrations. When we move to the tradition period starting in the Meiji era, literature begins to change even more. Writers were influenced by both Japanese tradition and Western ideas. They created works that were unique, emotional, and sometimes experimental. Some writers even tried to romanticize their stories or explore new themes that had not been written about before. Despite despite the struggle of World War II, Japanese modern literature stood out and gained worldwide recognition. In fact, many Japanese authors became famous across the globe. Some of these are Yasunori Kawabata, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature, Kabuki Abi, Takiji Kobayashi, and the very popular Haruki Murakami, who is known for his novels that blend reality with fantasy. The modern period. The modern period in Japan began during the Meiji era, a time when the culture finally opened its door to the West after years of isolation. This was very important stage in Japanese history because it's brought a lot of culture exchange with new ideas from other countries. During this time, Japanese writers started to explore different styles of writing. They did not only stick to the traditional forms but also began to experiment with new genres and subjects. For example, they combined Japanese themes with Western influence, which made their work richer and more creative. However, the modern period was not always smooth. The Second World War had a huge impact on Japanese literature. Many writers struggled during this time because of the difficulties the country faced. But even after the war, literature was able to recover and regain its popularity, showing the strength and resilience of Japanese culture.
The story follows a conversation between a 15-year-old boy and an imaginary figure named Crow. The boy is preparing to run away from home with a small amount of money taken from his father. Crow questions his plan, warning him about the difficulties of surviving alone, money running out, the impossibility of getting a job at his age, and the need to become stronger. Crow then guides the boy into a symbolic sandstorm exercise, explaining that fate is like a storm that cannot be avoided because it comes from within. The only way to survive is to face it and walk through it, even though it causes suffering and change. Crow insists that to survive, the boy must become the world's toughest 15-year-old. The excerpt ends with the boy's resolution. On his 15th birthday, he will leave home, journey to a distant town, and live inside a library, knowing that the experience will transform him forever.